So the second one was an iteration of the first one. So now instead of finding places where we knew planes could land, even though it was dirt strips, we were finding places where planes had never landed before. So we're doing a lot of terrain analysis. And again, every time we did this, we would give them a term called conditions favorable. When we got to a certain level of planning, we'd say we have conditions favorable that we believe we can jump in, mark this place, land airplanes, and go do stuff. But we're not sure because we've never had feet on the ground and we don't know what the ground penetration is. We don't know what the exact geometry is. We're looking at satellite imagery at this point. So it was more of the same of the first one, only a little bit riskier because we didn't have any overhead imagery that says, yes, a plane landed here, even though it was a smaller plane, something landed here before. Now we're in the middle of nowhere. And, from there, I then went on this tactical recce. So we jumped in, we did our missions, and then we brought in airplanes that brought in gun trucks. And then us and, a couple of platoons of Rangers stayed on the ground. And for the next 10 days, we drove around southern Iraq. I'm sorry, not southern Afghanistan, landing airplanes where planes aren't supposed to land. So every night we'd go out, we'd land airplanes, bring people in. Those people would either drive forward and go do deal death to the enemy, or we'd have helicopters come in and we'd bring them off the aircraft, get them up and running, let them fly forward a few times to destroy the enemy, come home, pack them up and head home. And then we would move to another site. So we were literally moving the center of gravity on the battlefield every single night. As we would go do this stuff, then we go, live in a hide site during the day, get a little bit of rest, pull a lot of security, have a little bit of food, and then go out the next night and do the same thing at a different location.
So you're talking, we know that Operation Rhino happens in October. Is this also still in October or is this in November? What's the timeline? So it's still in October.
This is still October. Yeah. We were doing this every single night. Not to move far ahead here. You want to talk about my 3 combat jumps in Afghanistan. The 24th STS, I think, did 7 or 8 combat jumps in that time. Matter of fact, the leaders of the other units were like, this is a goddamn jump trip for the 24th STS because every night you guys are out jumping. The last jump that we did, it was all senior guys in the unit who'd been sitting back doing administration while we were out, having fun with our job. They're like, okay, this is the last one. And they took a lot of the older guys on it. And it was pretty funny because a lot of those dudes got hurt because they were late in their career. But they're like, man, you guys got all these combat jumps. We're going to go get ours. And they earned it. They'd been busting their ass and they were career combat controllers. They were well capable of doing the job.
So at this point in October, by the time you face your second jump, is the Taliban still putting up regular resistance? Because I know Tor Bora hasn't quite happened yet. So what type of resistance is there on the ground at this point?
Yeah, so for us, when we were jumping in, there wasn't resistance at the point of parachute, if you will. I won't say resistance, where the combat or the kinetic engagement was happening was north of that. So when you jumped in, like one night we brought in the guys from Delta. They had 3 combat controllers with them, and then they immediately drove north, and they spent days in the field just laying waste to the enemy. And they were also doing some reconnaissance stuff as well. There were nights that we would just bring in the helicopters and they would fly north. And so there was no direct engagement. As a matter of fact, I typically tell people I did clandestine jumps, not combat jumps, because I wasn't getting shot at while I was under my parachute. It wasn't like World War II when they were jumping in, into Africa and into Europe. The only night that there was an engagement on the objective was Objective Rhino, and there were some people down, I think, on the west end of the airfield. The Rangers did what Rangers do, and they went and eliminated the threat.
I know that when we talked prior to the interview, you had a funny story on your second combat jump about something that you saw in the sky. I don't want to tip too many clues. Do you remember what I'm talking? Could you tell that story for the audience, please?
Yeah. So this was during our 10-day recce, and we're out one night, and north of us was the green zone, which is where the Taliban grow all their poppy. It's where the natural water flows, so it's where a lot of the population lives. And as we're running the airfield, I start periodically seeing these things coming towards us, and nothing impacting around us, but it's just coming towards us. So I told the guy on my team who was doing air traffic control, I said, "Hey, let the aircraft know we appear to be receiving incoming fire from the north. Make sure all the traffic comes in from the south or east or west, but don't go north of the LZ. And I said appears because it's an air traffic control term. Unless you know for a fact something is something, you don't say it is something. Well, he hopped on and said, "Hey, we're receiving, incoming rocket and mortar fire from the north." And so the pilot comes back and goes, "Yeah, that's a meteor shower." But it started off like one or two, and then it looked like 40 at a time were coming towards us. Again, nothing was landing towards us, so I just wanted to make sure airspace was cleared. But we didn't get the weather report that there was going to be a meteor shower that night. But it was a pretty impressive light show, that's for sure.
Well, you gotta take a moment to smile about random stuff like that. When you told
Oh,
me that
sure.
story, I loved it, and I wanted to make sure we included it because it's a little bit on the lighthearted side considering the subject matter. Your third combat jump, I know that this one is a little bit more secretive. You can't get into too much, which totally respect. We won't push the limits at all. But I do know that you were involved in getting a very, very, very sick soldier out of the area. What'd you do, and how did that kind of unfold?
Yeah, so this actually wasn't in conjunction with a jump. This was in conjunction with doing some low visibility operations on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And we were on a period where we had stopped where there were some tier 2 SEALs and combat controllers and PJ pararescuemen. And we were stopping there just to, pass some information back to higher headquarters, get some sleep, and get some food. While we were there, two helicopters had launched north to go pull a special forces soldier out of the mountains. He'd gotten sick. They didn't know if it was mountain sickness or it was something more serious, so the team wanted to evacuate him. On their way there, it's a flight of two MH-53s, and one of the 53s spirals in and hits the ground. It crashes. So that command immediately goes into rescue and recovery. How do we do this? Well, we had been looking at airfields all the way up and down the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And, as I was rolled into the briefings, just so I could see what was going on, I said, "Hey, we were just there, and we have a place that we can do a transload site if you'd like to do one." And they said, "Sure." So I tried to reach back to my command because we're different commands, right? They're a different task force than we are. Couldn't get a hold of anybody at my command. I said, "Okay, then we're just going," which is what the 24th allows you to do. You're able to go, "Okay, I'm going to make a decision and I'll live with the decision." If someone would get mad that I went on a mission that nobody approved, then that's fine. Well, the mission really was, we went into an airfield. We had SEALs there to pull security. We had a combat control team running the airfield. Because I'd been there the night before, I actually linked up with the curator of the airfield, if you will. And because now I wasn't there in civilian clothes, I was there in full uniform. I went up, I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm the guy from last night. We just need to use your airfield, like nothing bad's happening." And I got to calm him down. I had one of my guys at the control point, and I had one of my guys at the SEALs outside security. So we land here on helicopters. We get off and run the airfield. Those helicopters then go in to pick up the guys on the ground, and then we land at 1:30 to transload them. So the helicopters went in, picked up the guys, brought them back, put them back on the 1:30. We packed everything up. I said sayonara to my Pakistani teammate who owned the airfield, and I got on the back of the airplane. And it was pretty cool because that helicopter went down, had two pararescuemen and a combat controller on it. And as soon as I walked on the ramp, I was the last guy off the airfield. As soon as I walked on the ramp, my teammate Jamie, who's a pararescue, he's the pararescue team leader. He walked up and gave me a big hug. He's like, "Man, thanks for coming to get us." It's just a really neat experience. And Jamie is still in the military today. He's still in. But they were down behind enemy lines, and they were being tracked. So getting them out of there was pretty important.
That's incredibly still in today. That guy must be hell of a career, hell of a long time to be in. And again,
Yeah.
you're talking about like another tool in the toolbox of being a combat controller. We're building the airfields, we're finding places for planes to land, we're evacuating sick people when we need to. I mean, this is such an incredibly diverse skill set of what you guys can do. I do want to ask kind of on this early days of Afghanistan, the early months of Afghanistan, Did you know, like, where you were with the people you were with, were you guys aware of what was going on in Tora Bora when they were hammering the mountains with bombs? And, they felt like they were getting real close to bin Laden, or did you not learn about that until after the fact?
Yeah, I learned about it about halfway through our initial deployment. The commander came to me one day, he said, I need you to go sit in a meeting. I got another thing to go do. So I was the 2-4 representative in this meeting. And I'm in this meeting, it's all, O 06s and above, and then on the VTC were general officers. And they start talking about this guy up north doing stuff, and it's my teammate Will Markham. And not he wasn't at the 24th, he was at a different unit, so he was in a completely different task force. I came out of that meeting, I went to the commander, I said, did you know Will Markham's like laying waste up to the north? He's like, yeah, he's been doing that for a week. I'm like, fuck, I had no idea. So it wasn't widely dispersed. We were so focused on the thing that we were doing, we weren't really paying attention to what other people were doing at the tactical level. I know that the commands were talking to each other, but I had no idea until I sat in a meeting, and it was great to hear Will's name called out, by a 3-star general about all the great things he's doing up north. It was really cool.
That's awesome. I assume that this. So I interviewed one of the reasons I asked is I interviewed one of the Delta guys that was in Tora Bora on that very very small team, and he said that they had an Air Force guy with them, and that at
Yeah,
one point they'd called in, I think, what he called a daisy cutter, like some kind of big bomb.
yeah.
And he said when that daisy cutter hit the target, it was like ash just went up in the air. He said it was the craziest thing he'd ever seen in his life. I was just curious because Tora Bora is a very historical moment in the Afghanistan war, and you were there in the opening days as well.